Okay, we're live.
Well, hello and welcome everyone to Waking Up Spiritually. I'm Wendy Rose Williams, and Greg, Kirk, and I are so happy to have you here. It's Mother's Day for some of us, depending where you live in the world. And we broadcast twice a month on the second and fourth Sunday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm a past life adventure guide. I help people release energy that does not serve them anymore, notably pain, anxiety, depression. And my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. And our website for this broadcast is wakingupspiritually.com. And we also have a YouTube channel and are also getting up on the podcast apps. So today's going to be a neat retrospective, and I'll let Greg introduce himself and talk more about that and what our focus is for today. So welcome, everyone.
Hello, I'm Gregg Kirk, a light worker, energy healer. You could find me at greggkirk.com. That's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. And this is our 1 year anniversary. Wendy and I started, I don't remember the exact date. It's not exactly
May
9th.
16th.
May 16th. All right, excellent. That was our first broadcast, and we've been doing 2 a month ever since. So, and as Wendy said, we've gotten on the podcast apps as of about 2 months ago. So we thought we would take some time today and do a bit of a retrospective to go back. Wendy and I looked at what our most popular topics were based upon web traffic and YouTube traffic, and which actually, as she and I were discussing prior to starting the broadcast, it differs from our podcast traffic, which we'll bring up later. But without further ado, let me bring up our PowerPoint for today and get things moving for those who are watching us live and also watching us on YouTube. Okay. 1 year retrospective and highlights. Wendy, would you like to?
Sure. So I just thought it would be good to touch back on what was our original purpose and just make sure did that purpose still make sense, and are we helping people and hitting the right note. So our purpose for Waking Up Spiritually, as both a podcast, as a Facebook group, and just how Greg and I serve, is to help curious souls make sense of their personal spiritual awakening symptoms, paranormal experiences, and glimpses beyond the veil. And I think that's still extremely valid. And Greg and I both went through, as I think everyone does, some of that bucking bronco effect at times where you get the wild ride, and just having a helping hand can really make a difference. So anything to add to that, Greg?
Yeah, I think I have to give us a pat on the back, both of us, for doing a good job in doing a couple of things. One is kind of normalizing some of these supernatural experiences. So many people have them. And so helping people understand that you're not crazy, you're not losing your mind, and to really open you up and kind of tune you into, don't take, if the dreams that you have or that felt so real, but the experience itself was so bizarre, or maybe possibly mildly scary. It's okay. A lot of people are having these experiences, especially now. They seem to be getting more and more prolific, or more and more commonplace almost. The other thing that I like that we've done, and of course we would love to hear your feedback on this, is personalizing this as well. So, talking about our experiences, or maybe some experiences we've heard, and making it kind of, and giving some practical advice, and
yes, it's not just theory.
Right, exactly. We could come on here all day long and talk about supernatural and angelic realms and things like that, which, there's plenty of people doing that. And but we're talking about our own experiences that really did happen to us, as far out as they may seem to some people. But I think that's resonating with our audience. And of course, like I said, I'd love to hear from our audience on that, because especially how we could kind of fine tune what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, great. Well, let me just take a kind of a quick walk through some thoughts from what we've done in the first year and topics we've covered. And Gregg has done a beautiful job on the website of just putting in really specific titles and descriptions of each program. So absolutely invite you to go to wakingupspiritually.com or to go to our YouTube channel by the same name and just look through the episodes and find what might be of help to you. And today I want to spend a good amount of time, if it makes sense for you, Gregg, on spirit guides, because I think that remains just a top topic for people. And it's the only episode that we're not able to share because we recorded it differently because it was our very first program. And I still hear so many questions around who's my spirit guide and how do I connect and how can I trust it and how do I work with them. So we'll spend some good time on that. And that is why we started our year there 1 year ago this month. And past lives also was one of the most popular topics. So we'll get more into that. Energy management, I think that is critical. And what we mean by energy management is managing your own personal energy. So you discover, how can I be sovereign in my own energy? Meaning not carrying other people's energy, not allowing energy that you don't want to be on board. And I'm not talking about going off and being a hermit, even though we may feel like that from the last year and a half with COVID. But I'm talking about actually being able to live more in the world, if you choose to, more comfortably in the world, because you have good energy management and you know how to do things like ground your energy and clear your energy and raise your vibration, protect yourself when that's appropriate, and just have those good distinctions. So let me stop at that point, Gregg. Anything just really popping to mind in those areas?
Yeah, we did 2 episodes on energy management, 1 and 2, and they were 2 of my favorite episodes because this is what I'm talking about. We gave some great practical advice and suggestions on how to manage your energy. One had to do with the aspect of protection that Wendy was talking about. The other had to do with energy leaks. So as you go about your day and you expose yourself to various people, experiences, so forth, and you're not doing any kind of protection, energy can leak out of you, and you'll know it when, let's say you have lunch with a friend of yours who's, combative or negative or whatever, and your energies are not vibing, and you go home and you feel exhausted. So we gave some advice, I think in the you'll have to check it out at wakingupspiritually.com/broadcast. But Perfect. We gave some advice on how to, retain and protect your energy. And then I think we even got into the chakra system as well.
Yes. Sure. Yes. And what you're saying, Gregg, about getting depleted by other people, it doesn't have to be that way. And right. Again, it doesn't mean no interactions. But I had a client I worked with just on Friday, 2 days ago, and she works in a tech company. So she's working in industry. And even though she's working from home, she said by the end of the day, based on all the interactions she's had and so much work with the computer and the phone, she said she feels like a wilted flower. Yeah. And it was really interesting because as we did that session and as she raised her vibration and we were talking with her guides, what they said to her was, you may not necessarily need to leave this industry at this time because you may be able to just really learn how to manage your energy differently. Right. So it's just nice to have more options. Yes. Versus it's that old wisdom when we're running from something and just running away from it because we don't know what to do and we don't have the tools. Guess what? It's just going to follow us. Right. We're still going to have that issue regardless if we move or change jobs or jump into another relationship or whatever, because it's a sign of our own work needing to be done.
Right. I think it's making a distinction between, are there some adjustments you can make to kind of protect your energy so not leaking energy so much? Or are you in a situation where you're in a toxic environment and people are attacking you and you need to get out? So
Correct.
it's just making that distinction.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a critical distinction. Absolutely. And then we did an episode on waking up and how did each of us go through that. And there just were some, in hindsight, some of the experiences that I had are really funny. And I can just see where having some sense of humor and trying to keep some perspective would have really helped me. But at the time, they just felt really weird and off-putting and confusing, and I just didn't understand what was going on with some of the early experiences. So as Gregg said, just trying to share some of that and personalize it a little bit, and know that help is available, and we're just so happy to give a helping hand and provide some resources and tips and techniques. So because it really is true. All boats rise together with the tide. So just happy to provide that help. We got into two episodes, spiritual practice, where we talked about meditation and yoga, and whether you want to work with chanting or auto writing or whatever it might be, but just the concept of realizing, hey, I am a spiritual being, I am an energetic being, and just giving yourself that time and that permission and that structure. I mean, it might be as little as 15 minutes a day, but just taking care of your energy and having some sort of spiritual practice was an episode that led directly into the next episode, where we shared some of our spiritual tools. And there can be confusion on the topic of tools. And some people will say, well, gosh, I'm giving away my power. I shouldn't need to have crystals. I shouldn't, need to have a statue, that I enjoy working with. And that's fine. If you don't need if you feel you don't need any tools or don't want to use oracle cards, there's no one answer. There's nothing prescriptive. I think Gregg and I work hard to hit the right note of, we're not trying to say, hey, you have to do this. This is the only way. This is the best way. This is the right way.
Yeah. Just to kind of, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
please.
I wanted to add right to that, because I was one of those people who, for instance, like crystals, I didn't believe that they worked. I didn't, and I think we definitely talked about this in another episode. I wasn't really on board with the idea of animal totems. I just thought, that's something else that other people believe in. It doesn't seem of any practical use to me. Same thing with crystals. I would see people putting crystals all over themselves when they were meditating or during healing sessions and so forth. Didn't resonate until I had experiences where crystals were blessed and given to me, and I felt them vibrate in my hands, and I started seeing results. So it's one of those things where you kind of believe it after you experience it.
Right.
We're very observational beings, so we tend not to believe too many things that we don't observe. So that's how it happened with me. The same thing with animal totems, but in this situation, I was doing remote sessions and doing viewing, and it was happening every time where I would see a person's animal totem, and I would actually
how neat.
apologize to them and say, I don't really believe in this, but I'm seeing your animal totem is, XYZ. And it finally, just really, I changed my mind after I did a session with my cousin, where, I was seeing her very vividly as, feline. And I mentioned it to her, and she just joked with me. She said, Gregg, look at my email address. And it was like Tiger Girl 69. And she's like, look at my house. She shows me a picture. It's tiger pictures, figurines, keychains, everything. She was doing it right, because in the case of animal totems, you keep that energy of whatever animal that resonates with you around you, so pictures and figurines and keychains she was already doing it right. So anyway, that's kind of been my quick experience with being open-minded. I think it's just your life is better when you're open-minded
That's
anyway.
a perfect way to put it. And that leads right into the next topic, which was trusting your intuition, because it's really important to get to that place where we can trust our intuition and know that we are very wise beings. I mean, most of us have incarnated hundreds, if not thousands of times, is my personal belief. And many of us have incarnated not only on Earth, but on other planets, perhaps in other dimensions, that sort of thing. So we're very wise, but our trust can just get really rattled, get really destroyed, even along the way, because we can be remembering past life experiences where things really didn't go well. And we can even lose our trust in the divine. We can lose our trust in God, higher power, the universe, whatever your belief system is, because again, it's just different for different people. So there's a wonderful energetic chiropractor healer named Dr. Nels that I've done some work with. He's focusing on animal healing primarily at this time, but he just has this wonderful practice of just take a big breath in and put your hand over your heart and say, I trust. And just know that you're very wise and you're just going to be able to discern what's right for you and what is just not resonating at all. Well, just let it go. You don't have to engage in something that just you really can feel isn't right for you. But when people are really, really struggling with trusting their intuition, trusting that the universe has their back, I think that's one of the most important decisions we can make, even though there can be real challenges at times. And that's just part of the ride. That's part of being human. We come here for the experiences, and some of us are experiential learners, so we seem to have even more wild or challenging experiences than most people. But if you don't trust in yourself, if you don't trust in the divine, that can lead to that dark night of the soul, where life is really feeling pretty darn hopeless, because we've lost our ability to hope and to expect things to get better again. So, anything you want to add to that, Gregg?
No, let's
Okay.
keep
Okay.
going.
And that episode led directly into our next one, which Gregg called spiritual refocusing, which was a great way to frame it. And I think of spiritual refocusing. That's what happens when things need to be tweaked, and it's time to change it up. And if we're just kind of like getting into like too much of a groove, maybe too much of a rut, it's time to change it up. And otherwise we can end up having like a harder crash if we're not paying attention to those subtler signs of, gosh, I'm not feeling uplifted by my meditation practice, by the way I'm doing my meditation practice. For a long time, for instance, I meditated for 15 minutes and then I would auto write messages from my higher self and guides for 5 minutes a day. But it just got to the point where it was kind of stale and it was just time to change it up. Or I also got to the point where how I was clearing and blessing my home and property, I just like didn't want to do it. I just felt like kind of burned out on it. So those are signs it's time to spiritually refocus and change it up, bring some freshness back into it.
Yeah, just to add to that, how there's a spiritual refocusing going on is, at least in my experience, is even after you've listened to your guides and you've taken, they don't, well, the guides don't seem to like it when you're in a comfortable state, so things are kind of going along and you're not growing spiritually. And
spiritual
the other
complacency.
The opposite of that is just you're in a rut and it. That's one thing. But when you're kind of like just not stepping out, you'll know it. You're kind of, energy's kind of stagnant.
Right. You're playing it small.
The guides will come in and put a roadblock in your path that doesn't feel very good.
Mm-hmm.
And in my situation, it was like it shifted my way I earn my living to be on a more spiritual path. And things went well for a while until they didn't. Things didn't go well. And I just had a moment of a freak out where I was just yelling, like, what do you guys want me to do? What else? I'm doing everything. And this is where I came up with the term spiritual refocusing, because yes, I started this new way of earning living, but they were refocusing the details, which was very important, because otherwise I would have gone off and, not gone down a more beneficial path for myself or even for humanity. So they refocused me by shutting things down for a while. There was a period of time where I had no clients. And I just thought, what is going on? It was after I made a few adjustments that things picked back up again and took off. It was so noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where, if you're not in tune with this stuff, you would just look at it like, wow, I have bad luck. Well, no, it's not that. There's interactions going on between you and your guides, and if you look at things that way, you'll be able to pick up on these these hints and messages and so forth. So
Right. Gregg, when you were explaining that, I could just see your guides with like a kaleidoscope for you. And it's
yes,
like there was this like beautiful picture. And then because it needed to change, it's like all the little, pieces have to fall and rearrange as you were,
exactly.
declaring that new intent. And there's going to be another beautiful picture that might look totally different, but there's that moment where it's like, oh gosh, it's got to fall apart to come together.
Yep.
So I think that
That.
can go on.
Yeah, and it usually doesn't feel good when things are falling apart, but they do come back together. Nothing
It
stays
doesn't.
in the same state. So
Right. It doesn't feel good at that time, but once you recognize and say, oh, am I going through one of these stages where I need to spiritually refocus? People may experience that with friends falling away, even long-term friends. But if you go through, or family members, just not as close or just don't have as much in common. And this is not meant disrespectfully. We can still love family and friends, but there just may not be as much in common anymore. And when you just let those relationships wrap up gently, if and when they're meant to, that can just allow those new, more like-minded friends to come in and just get you in a good place again. So that bothered me a lot in the beginning when I was first really waking up, because it was like, oh my goodness, it's like I don't feel like I can relate to anybody anymore. No one wants to talk about these things that are like so interesting to me now, and it didn't feel good. So I just needed to, make that decision. Do I just stay with becoming more and more the true me, which I felt really compelled to do, and know that there just might be some fallout, and that's okay. That's okay. Because as those doors close, don't go back and try and yank it open again, or be scratching at the door that won't open, or kicking at the door that won't open. It's not meant to. And that was counterintuitive to me, because I just was kind of raised, well, if it's not happening and you think it's supposed to happen, just try harder, just try harder, just try harder, to the point of it making no sense and being absolutely exhausting. And I just didn't think to like refocus myself and look around and say, hey, what other opportunities might there be as I'm raising my vibration, and just finding a new way of being, and what new doors and windows and what else is opening up for me that feels easy and fun and just like falls into place like magically. Like getting my first book published was like that. I had such a block to finishing my first book and getting it published. But then once I really declared my intent, I couldn't believe how many people stepped forward to help me and created the perfect cover and were test readers and did editing for me. I mean, it was magical. but I had kind of been raised, oh, it's not supposed to be easy. Don't take the easy way out. And I just really want to say, kind of examine those beliefs and examine that wording. Because I'm not saying don't be responsible, don't do your work, but ease and grace and flow. I didn't know those concepts at all. So that made a big difference for me. How about you, Gregg? Anything to add there?
Well, there's a saying about that. Don't stick with a mistake just because you've invested a long time, a
Spent a
lot
lot
of
of time
years
making
in
it.
making it. So,
Right?
but there's always something better on the other side of the spiritual refocusing, which involves all this turmoil. It's always bigger and better than you would have hoped. So if that gives you any incentive to get through it's that, because usually what's happening during the spiritual refocusing is our guides are helping us with, we've set up some very limiting parameters or thoughts or beliefs, and they are just shaking us to say it can be better than that.
Exactly.
During the
Let me
shaking
shake
process,
you to wake you.
yeah, during that process, it doesn't feel good while you're being shaken, but when you get through it, it's always a bigger and better situation. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we did an episode on raising our vibration and shared experiences there. Mine, in a nutshell, was a very conscious experience where I did learn how to align with my higher self, because I used to think, oh, my higher self is something like off in heaven that like I can't attain in this lifetime. But I feel very differently now. And I feel we can be our higher self in a body on a daily basis. So learning how to do that, learning how to learn my lessons and transmute my karma, which included being more grateful and also forgiving, being much more forgiving, less judgmental, and also learning to forgive myself, just being much lighter and kinder to myself was important. And just those just different steps of going through and raising my vibration. I had a tremendous spontaneous Kundalini rising. So that was one of those like just crazy experiences where I didn't really know what was going on. But got that energy all grounded and seated, because the body's got to be prepared for that Kundalini rising as we move up to 5D, the fifth spiritual dimension, and higher. And then I heard the most gorgeous celestial music. And I could just feel it heal me from the inside out. And that was like the last step of really raising my vibration. And then I did need to work with a spiritual teacher, because my nervous system was just like, too much. How do I ground this? How do I hold this? So it's okay to ask for help. I don't believe we're meant to go through life solo. So it's okay to ask for help. So energetic attachments was a powerful episode, and Gregg shared a lot of insights there of just how do we get our energy really clear and keep it clear, because there can be other beings that we just look pretty good to. And just that concept again of sovereignty and just being able to carry your own energy is absolutely a game changer. And then we did an episode on life purpose. And that, as I said, is just one of the top two things that we hear the most frequently from clients and people saying, what's my life purpose? I just need to feel more tuned into that. And life purpose, in summary, it's just something you enjoy doing so much that you lose track of time. It also can typically be stated in 2 to 7 words. So it's just so obvious that we miss the forest for the trees and just don't realize that our life purpose can be as simple as, for one lifetime as an example, be the absolute best parent I can be. Or someone may learn in their session as we talk with their guides, they may learn, I'm meant to be here to help others. It can be just that simple, but that profound. And we can just be like running around going, what's my life purpose? What's my life purpose? And get ourselves on that hamster wheel. So any comments to that point, Gregg?
Yeah, I was doing a group healing circle earlier today, and this actually came up, life purpose, where the guides were saying to pay attention to it, and now is the time to really discover it. It's one of those things where before you took this life, you set some goals for yourself, you and your guides. What you're going to do in this lifetime. So to your point, and so the advice that the guides gave today was, what were your passions when you were really young, before the age of about 6 years old, when you started getting feedback and input from the people around you? Well, you can't be an astronaut and make money, or you can't, whatever, So kids usually, at least when I grew up, we had these pie in the sky ideas of what we wanted to be. But we also had some unique ones that were unique to us, So the guides were saying, what is your unique passion? And you may discover it if you think back to what were your passions when you were younger, or you may have already arrived at it. So what are you really passionate about? And forget about whether it puts a roof over your head or you're making money. Those are different things. Those pastimes and pursuits are about something else. So but what's the passion? And it's usually coupled with service to others, helping others, as you mentioned, Wendy. So that's basically the input that we received today, which goes right into the life purpose. So
right, exactly. And then we did an episode on soul groups, soulmates, and soul contracts. And in summary, I just see soul groups as lovely beings that we have traveled with before. And soul groups and soulmates fulfill many purposes, and those roles can change as we interact with the same souls again, and have pre-planned our life, pre-planned what we want to learn at the soul level, and kind of figure out our whether you look at it as adventure camp or school or a play. Are three of the most common analogies of kind of how we look at our life as we're planning it and say, hey, I'm going to go on down there and take on human form, and here's what I want to be learning. So one time you might have a certain soul as your mother, but you may have been their mother in past lifetimes, or a sister, or some other very close relationship. And that past life energy can come through sometimes a bit too strongly. So just getting those sorts of things sorted out can really help. And we also talked about soulmates, the many roles, because soulmates they can just be amazing, because you can meet people and you're just thinking, oh gosh, I know you. I don't know how I know you, but I'm just so glad I found you again. And you just feel like, oh, I want to catch up. I mean, you've known this person for 15 seconds, but it can just be that feeling. It's just really, really interesting. There can also be the opposite, where you can just absolutely not want to shake hands with this person if it's like a business setting, and you're like, oh boy, back up. And that can be a soulmate too. And there may be some old energy that you need to clear, or you need to learn how to forgive or not be judgmental, or whatever the lessons might be. And then we also make these very intriguing agreements, soul contracts with people, and just agree, okay. And I'll give you an example of some of mine. I met a soulmate in 2010, and he had the contract to wake me up spiritually. And I figured that out, not right at the time, but a few years later. And he did that by introducing me to Journey of Souls and by telling me about past life regression and life between lives, because he was already deep into that path and had had multiple sessions himself and had been doing a lot of reading in this area himself. And I just took to it like a duck to water, because that was our agreement, was he was going to wake me up spiritually. So anything to add to that, Gregg?
Yeah, I think this was the episode where we made the distinction between twin flame and soulmate, and because that's a term that's being thrown around in the spiritual community.
Yes.
So the idea there is that yes, you can have soul groups and soulmates, but a twin flame is that, I think what you just described, somebody who wakes you up, or you have this deep interlocking relationship with, that can be a little, sometimes not always a fun ride. You might be lovers, and then you might separate, or you may not necessarily be lovers, but your interactions are deeply emotional.
An emotional intimacy that's just, there can be a lot
beyond
of
anything. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of this is, like you said, contracts that you've set up beforehand. And a lot of it's, from my experience, it's been karma burning, so people who were mean or not, mistreated other people in other lives that are now on the opposite end of it in their lifetime now. Dolores Cannon talks a lot about that. I haven't experienced a lot of that myself with the sessions I've done, but I remember reading about it in her book that one woman was really being not very nice to her husband, and they were going through a divorce. And then I guess when they looked into what the past life had been prior, like he had beheaded her, like in another life.
Yes.
So it was, the karma was being unwound on that situation.
Yes.
To kind of balance things out. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, there can just be some really, really pretty intense contracts, as you said, and people can be just unwinding that sort of thing. And then we did an episode on alien origins, because many of us are, and it can be very surprising when this type of information first starts to come in, but we can start to remember, or we can learn during a past life regression session, guess what? I haven't only incarnated on Earth, I've incarnated on other planets, and may have also incarnated in other dimensions. So I have many more clients in the last year who are remembering having been a fairy, remembering having been a dragon, a mermaid, a dolphin, a whale, on this planet, on another planet, or more likely it's interdimensional, because it's kind of like the location kind of goes away. In some sense. So I just think that's fascinating. I think we live in such fascinating times, because I feel like we're really putting the pieces together of who we really are as souls, and people are more and more waking up to the complexity and just the beauty of all that. And it can be just very, very freeing to realize that. And it also can explain physical challenges and issues. I was having a lot of trouble with mobility. I went through a real bout with frozen hips, and I also had 2 surgeries on my right foot. So there just were a lot of things going on with mobility. And I worked with a shaman, and he immediately said, do you remember your multiple lifetimes as a mermaid? And my jaw kind of dropped, because I had known about them and I remembered them and I felt they were real, but then my left brain and my ego would come in and go, oh, you're just being fanciful. There's just, I don't know. Have you watched too many movies? what's this really about? But he just, the way he explained it, he said, well, that's kind of what's going on with your body, is you're kind of like a little bit resentful of having to walk. And you're having, are you, and then he started asking me questions. Are you having any trouble, like feeling like it's hard going forward with where your life should be going spiritually and energetically? And I said, yes. I had been really frozen in fear for a time period. And that's where the frozen hips had come in after this foot surgery that didn't go well. So once we just started to talk about that, and he's like, well, go get yourself in the water and, just go swimming, go be in a pool. So I started doing floating, going and doing sensory deprivation floating. And I cannot tell you how much that healed my body and how much happier my body got. And just really, made a difference. So, because that you can do year round. You can't always go in the ocean, and a lot of the pools have just been closed, but things can just come up that just are really, really interesting, that help us be healthier and happier now. And just, we can move in that direction. So Gregg, do you want to recap the Oversoul and what we talked about there?
Yeah, that was some information that came through that was astounding to me. Through a couple of sessions and also through the online group healing circles. So the idea was that you've got multiple energy bodies, and you've got guides. And the information I got is that one of your guides is actually you. And the way it was described at first was, you in the future. But then the guides came in not long after and said, it's actually, you're not in any time frame. You're out of time and space. It's your oversoul. And I thought, oh, fascinating. So your oversoul is actually overseeing,
orchestrating.
These sessions, keeping your free will, intact, and not giving you the answers to the test kind of thing. And that the information I got, that which was fascinating, as we go through our lifetimes, our past lifetimes in particular, or especially the ones where we've had trauma and energy blocks, as we release those bits of stuck energy, it sends energy flow up to the oversoul, and the oversoul rises. It advances. That's kind of the goal to what we're going through here on Earth, is to release these pockets of energy, to release karma and all this stuff, so the energy flows directly up into the oversoul. So ultimately, the oversoul can join the creator. So that was the goal. So that was really great information. It came through over the course of multiple sessions, but I personally found that a fascinating episode, and I hope
that is fascinating. I can kind of see the oversoul like a symphony conductor. And then just, we're learning how to play all the instruments and all the music and all the parts. And it's just, kind of all coming together there with that conductor or that oversoul.
Right.
And we then did an episode on transformational travel, and Gregg shared some wonderful guidance that he was given to go help heal the earth and clear some energies in different specific locations. And I took the approach of sharing past life pilgrimages that I've been on, where I've been directed to go to certain places such as Glastonbury, England. And I live in Seattle, so that was a good transatlantic trip. Because I needed to specifically receive some healing in Glastonbury based on several past lives that I had there. So that was a really fun episode that was an unusually long one. That's the longest episode we've done. We were just really loving those stories.
That was also, it is our most downloaded podcast. It's almost 2 hours long. So I guess people are downloading it and then going for a hike or a workout or something. So,
or playing it in two different parts or whatever. But yeah, that
right.
was just a lot of fun. Yeah, I have made about 9 or 10 of those trips. So we could certainly do another episode about that, since that one seemed of interest. And then we did an episode on breaking cycles. Gregg, can you recap that one for the listeners?
Yeah, that was another one where some information was just kind of coming through. It was successive information over the course of multiple sessions I was doing, where the guides were saying similar things, like get out of your rut. It's time to break the cycles that no longer serve you. And so they were really giving firm advice and pointed advice on what. Stop your robotic behavior, stop your routines where you're not being mindful, where you're just acting like a robot through many, many hours of the day. I mean, think about that. It's advice that we always need to follow. How much of your behavior is just standard routine, standard operating procedure? So they were saying to get out of that and get into a mindful state. But also that it affects our energy the longer we stay in these cycles. And the cycles can become, groups of cycles, and it can, you can get stuck in the wheel ruts of life. So that was great advice.
Absolutely. Because yes, we can just be so overscheduled. And both Gregg and I worked in industry for years. And that's just kind of how, life worked. You had to get up at a certain time and, rush out the door and drive to work, and just lots of meetings. And, but there just wasn't a lot of opportunity to more go with the flow. So now, I mean, certainly my day is so different now. And certainly I may have certain appointments at certain times, but other than that, I'll just listen to my higher self and listen to my guides and say, hey, what should I be working on first? Or should I just be say, hey, I'm not working on the to-do list today. I just really feel like I should be going out and taking a walk, or just enjoying some time in my yard, or I really feel like doing some gardening, and just be more spontaneous and just more going with the flow. That was very alien to me.
Yeah, because there's
very different.
The guys were saying the idea of busyness is not going to help you wake up or advance spiritually. You don't get extra points for being busy. And in fact, it's totally fine to go and take a nap, or to go and just, sit in nature for a while and just unwind.
Yes.
Being busy is not always, usually
you don't
not
get any gold stars for that.
No.
But we got socialized that way, and
yes.
And
it's kind of like you were saying earlier about the idea of nothing good comes unless you do hard work. Unless you're busy, you're doing hard work. And speaking of the corporate world, I was actually introduced to the idea of the difference between working hard and working smart. So if you can do the job in half the time by doing fewer steps and you're more efficient, isn't that better than struggling and doing hard work and pushing the boulder up the hill?
Absolutely. Yes, Sisyphus did get very tired with that eternal punishment.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we both shared our near-death experiences. We talked about our NDEs, and I think I'm very grateful that people are sharing those publicly now. There's a lot of interest and a lot of podcasts and organizations, such as the International Association of Near-Death Studies, that have support groups, not only for people who have had a near-death experience or are wondering if they've had a near-death experience. Also, a spiritually transformative experience can be very profound and can just need some help to understand what really happened. What does that mean to me? How do I get my feet back on the ground? Because it feels like the ground really shifted. But I think, again, we live in wonderful times because there's some great quality information out there that you can just check out. And there's some great research regarding near-death experiences that just wasn't available until the 1970s, when Raymond Moody first coined that term and started doing some research in that area, but just more and more great information in that area. And I think those near-death experiences, they're so transformative, not only for the people who have them, but for people who hear the stories, because they hear what it's like on the other side, which can really help us let go of that fear of death, that fear that it has to be painful to pass over. And also just hear that people bring back these messages of love, and also of getting more on their life path or on their life purpose. Because a lot of times NDEs are a big spiritual refocusing, where it's like, woo, we need to correct you. We need a big mid-course correction, because you're kind of like going along like the Titanic and not going in the direction that you as a soul planned before you incarnated. That was the big surprise to me in my near-death experience. I had it in 1997 when I was newly pregnant. And what I learned some very uplifting, wonderful things, but my guides also said, life is going to be very hard for many years, because you're not on your life path. You're not living your purpose. So that really got my attention. That really woke me up. And I think that was part of getting me to the point where I would be interested and willing to be a spiritual seeker, because I had had that profound message. So anything to add to that, Gregg, or can you just take us into messages from the guides?
Yeah, I'll take us right into messages from the guides. So this was a collection of direct, quotes and messages Wendy and I have both gotten from, doing our practices, and, a combination of some great quotes. I'll share a couple. One is love plus wisdom equals grace. And the guides were giving that great, basically saying that, walking in grace is walking in the light of the Creator. That's another one. I mean, really good stuff.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And another one just came through recently in a session that I did not mention in this episode is fear is the tool the weak use to prey on the weaker. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, wow. Oh, say that again. You have to I need to unpack that.
Yeah, fear is the tool that the weak use to prey on the weaker.
Yes. Oh, that really is profound. And then there's also the acronym of fear being false evidence appearing real.
Right.
So, yes.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that we got, that we discussed in that episode.
Wonderful.
I think we were also talking about how did we know if the messages were legit or not? And we were talking about, well, if they use words that we don't know, or we have to look up afterwards. That's usually when we know that information didn't come from us; it came from outside of us.
Also, the speed with which it comes. I find when I'm muscle testing and asking a question of my guides, and it's like I've already got it. Like the minute I'm asking it, then I know I've got a really good connection. Also, I can just feel the love. If I'm feeling confusion, that's ego. So, or fear. So, there's just a distinct difference. And then we did an episode on animal partners, and my cat Midnight just came, and he's like laying here on the desk a little bit out of sight, just wants to be petted at the moment. It's like, yes, talk about animal partners, because animals are just such a wonderful companion and such a big deal. Whether you have pets and animal companions yourself in your home now, or have grown up with them, or would like to have them in the future, or whether you really relate to wild animals, insects, just what's going on out in nature. Because I'll notice, for instance, the squirrels. And whenever I notice the squirrels, I know I'm supposed to just stop what I'm doing, stop working, it means I'm overworking. I'm supposed to just be more playful and just, get outside and just be silly and just more move into that energy, because squirrels can be so playful and just, their wonderful mobility of how they race around. So anything you want to add to the animal partners, Gregg?
Yeah, just the fact that animals can also be kind of like energetic shields for us. I remember, talking about a situation where I had gone to a home to do an energy clearing, and there was a lot of turmoil and disease in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty wild. So I, helped remove some of the stagnant energy from the house. But as we were talking, the mother of the house said, well, here comes our dog. And the dog was covered in tumors. So I'd never seen tumors on a dog's paws before. It was all over. And I just kind of blurted out, well, your dog is taking on this energy as well. And she said, oh yeah, dog's always present when we have arguments or so forth. And that was one of the most clear examples I've ever seen of a dog, just taking on some of these slings and arrows that are energetic slings and arrows, so that some of the people in the house didn't have to. I've seen it with healing sessions as well. I've seen animals actually come into sessions, and or while I'm doing a remote session, the person on the other end will say, my cat or my dog has now just come and is laying down next to me. I can't tell you how many times that happens. Yes. Where the animal wants to participate and potentially shield the patient, which is,
well, they're healers. They're just natural healers, and they can see things and sense things that we don't see. Right. So absolutely, they're drawn to the healing energies, and they themselves are healers. I mean, there's all the studies showing that people's blood pressure goes down. There's less loneliness and depression in seniors who may be very, very isolated and living alone, if they can have a small pet. That sort of thing. So yes, they're amazing, amazing partners. So, and then we did an episode on balancing the ego. And I think it's just important to know, make friends with your ego. You can't eliminate it. You can't eradicate it. It's got some functions, but I think of the ego, I mean, its job is to keep us alive in some ways, but there's not a lot of saber-toothed tigers running around anymore. So I think the ego can be kind of underemployed. So it can be just like worrying about too many things and too anxious. So there's techniques we can do to balance the ego. And I really like the quote, the mind is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. And I think a better word would actually be the ego. It's a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. Because yes, it does, it's part of our human psyche. So if you're hearing someone saying, oh, I can, teach you how to eliminate it, personally, that doesn't fit my belief system. So anything about ego, Gregg, or you want to take us into spiritual protection here?
Yeah, let's go right into spiritual protection. So this was an episode where Wendy and I talked about protecting yourself from the various things, some of the things we touched on earlier, like leaking energy, but we went beyond that because let's face it, those who are waking up spiritually, sometimes when your light is shining brighter, it makes you a bit of a target for some negative beings that, so the idea was not to raise fear or apprehension about that. Idea was to give you tools to protect yourself. So we went into details about that, about how we protect ourselves. So did you want to add anything about that, Wendy?
Yes, I had a very interesting, and there doesn't have to be poor intent either. I had an interesting experience when I was first really waking up and really opening my crown chakra and shining my light up toward heaven, and just downloading that light energy. And I could just feel all these sad beings around me. I mean, I would literally burst into tears sometimes when I was doing this. I'm like, my gosh, I need to get some training in this. I need to have someone help me with this. So I had a lovely spiritual teacher come to my home, and she helped me with it. And she said, show me what you do, show me what your protocol is, because I know you're new to this and you're working to open your energy and, bring that in. And I showed her what I did, and we were standing in my dining room together, and she said, oh my goodness, you just attracted countless ghosts. There's like hundreds, if not like 1,000 ghosts. So I was like, oh, that's what that is, because I had recently gone through this big experience where I had recognized that I myself had been a ghost in a past life. And I'd gone through this big process of, how do I get myself home? What lesson did I miss? And how do I do the soul retrieval? So I guess all those poor ghosts were like, oh gosh, look, she knows how to do this. And that wasn't my intent, to put out this, call for hundreds, if not 1,000 ghosts. So she just called in angels and got them moved away. And we just readjusted, and she taught me some techniques so that I would not be doing that. And we also adjusted like my home and property, so it wasn't putting out this, I kind of picture like this billboard on my roof, ghosts, come on here. So, but that was an example of just not knowing. And again, they had no poor intent. They just needed to find their way to the light. And ghosts can get confused, like in other lower vibration. They're like, oh goodness, look, there's the light. And yes, I mean, we're working to be the light and be way showers and turn on our light, but we're not meant to be that, that lighthouse for all of that. Right. So that was just an interesting experience with that. And we then moved into a series. Our most recent episodes were on miracles and magic, and just some of the most amazing, incredible things that have been happening for both Gregg and I on our spiritual path as we've been doing this work and learning how to live this way for the last decade or decades. And Gregg, I think that series can continue. I've got a bunch more of those I'd love to share.
Right. Every day some miracles are happening, so we can keep on going.
Absolutely.
With that series for sure.
Absolutely. So let's get into a little more detail on the next slide of guides, for instance. So let me give you, in the interest of time, give you my quick download on connecting with your spirit guides. So my belief is we all have a spirit guide, at least one spirit guide. Your own higher self, your own intuition may be your spirit guide, so to speak, or some people more relate to them as a little bit more external, but there's still an aspect of us. I mean, it really is that expression of we're all one. And your guides can be surprising. I love helping people. Every client session I do, I'm helping people connect with their guide or guides. And the guides can be anything. Many of them are ascended masters, angels, ancestors. They might be a benevolent being from another planet. They might be a wonderful creature from another dimension, like a dragon or a fairy, etc. But I've had people have some really fun ones come in recently during sessions. And it can throw you off because they're going to appear any way that you can perceive them. And they're often so fun. They can come in like as cartoon characters or animated characters, just to kind of like make us laugh and raise our vibration. But it can throw people off. And that helps us connect with our guide. But it can throw people off, and they'll say to me, oh, I must be doing it wrong. And I'm like, well, what are you seeing or sensing or hearing or feeling? What's going on? And this gentleman said to me, or it was a gal, she said to me, well, it's Mr. Incredible. Do you know who Mr. Incredible is from the movie? And I'm like, oh, goodness. And that is her guide. And it's
Wow.
perfectly appropriate for her. And we just had so much fun connecting with Mr. Incredible. So don't feel you're doing it wrong. And then a guide can show themselves in a different way to you another time as you get to know them better. But just don't feel you're doing it wrong. Occasionally a guide will even come in just as a color. So someone will just say to me, well, there's just this like beautiful purple and it's just like swirling and like wrapping all around me. And it's like, okay, great. How do you feel? And they're like, oh, I feel so much better. I feel so much more supported. I feel more loved. Well, that's the way the guide presented to them. So that can just come in so many different ways. I had one gentleman tell me recently, oh, well, that's kind of odd. My guide looks like one of the guys from ZZ Top. He's got this like long, straggly beard. And I'm like, well, let's just go with it. Let's just assume you're doing it right. And let's just go with it. And it absolutely was a guide. And another person had one come in and he said, oh my goodness, he looks like he's on Wall Street. He looks like he's got like the gavel and he's like declaring, like the opening call for the trading to start. And that was his guide. So just have an open mind. And how do you trust the information? That becomes the next step of just discerning. And if you feel that love, if you feel caring for you, if you feel wisdom, if you're learning new things, that instant connection, uh, that's very powerful. And most of the time when you feel you are connecting with a guide, you really are. Occasionally, and you're going to know if it's not legitimate. You're going to know if it's very occasionally there's like this trickster energy, because we just like don't quite have our discernment down of what's right for me, what's helpful for me. And you'll know if you feel confused, if you feel worry, if you feel like, I don't know, then just stop. Just stop. Declare your sovereignty. Take a couple deep breaths. Try again to connect, or maybe you're just going to choose to let it go for that moment, and try again later in the day, or try again another day. So, Gregg, what are some of your thoughts? Because this is just such a big thing for so many people. It was life-changing for me to get connected with them and learn how to muscle test, learn how to use oracle cards, because I didn't know how to meditate in the beginning, but I was so driven to connect with my guides.
Yeah, so I always see with the sessions I do, I see at least a dozen around everyone, and I've been privileged enough to be present when some loved ones have passed on, and I've seen the guides that show up to meet them, and it's in the hundreds. It looked like a spiral staircase going up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Upwards. So guides there are quite a few. During sessions, I have people say, well, what do they look like? And I don't pay attention to that. They just kind of look like light, human shaped light beings. Mm-hmm. And every now and then one will step forward, mm-hmm. give a special message, or to present themselves, or to make a spectacle of themselves. I don't know. But it's not very often. But so I basically, when I'm doing sessions with people, let's not get hung up on who they are, what they do, what they look like. Let's listen to what they're here to tell you something.
Right.
Listen to that. That's the important thing. So.
Absolutely. And a little tip, when you're having a dream, when you notice anyone in a dream that has a title, whether it's teacher, doctor, hotel clerk, cashier, Uber driver, that is a guide. So pay attention, pay particular attention to what that person in your dream is saying or doing or helping you with or encouraging you to do. because guides definitely connect during the dream time with us, just like they do during meditation, or just when we're just relaxing, or calming down, or just out in nature, or doing our gardening, washing the dishes. Just when our mind and our soul is relaxed. So let's talk about past lives, because that was one of the most popular topics. And I would just like to reassure you, because some of the top questions and concerns I hear in this area is, well, what if I did something horrible, or what if I went through something really distressing in a past life? And I just want to reassure you, during sessions, we're raising our vibration and frequency. So no matter what you experience or see, you're releasing what doesn't serve you anymore. So the prompt that I give to people during the session, and we first go to a healing temple, and then we do a guided meditation to meet with your guide. And then what we do is go to the time and place with the most healing and information for your life today. So you're going to go somewhere where there's some past life energy to release. There's something to let go of. Might be earlier in this lifetime, because it's not always the traditional past life, but often it is. Could also be a parallel or simultaneous life that's going on right now on Earth, on another planet, in another dimension. Or it can also be a future life potentiality, because the future's always changing, where, like Gregg said, with the oversoul and just time really is continuous, is really a better picture of what's going on. So there isn't really any past, present, future, but we need that construct as humans. It's just, we have to kind of like put it in a box to make more sense to us. But so there's lots of healing and releasing that goes on. Also, people can embrace and bring forward their forgotten abilities, and that is wonderful. So I was super stuck and was not finishing or publishing my first book. And a past life regressionist helped me so profoundly she just asked my higher self and guides once we were into the session and I'd relaxed. She just said, well, has she ever been a scribe? Has she ever copied scrolls or copied over documents and that sort of thing? Has she ever written a newspaper column? Has she ever had a diary or a journal? She didn't go straight into, has she ever written a bestseller? Because I would have just been like, oh my gosh, too much. But she just kind of eased into the topic. And once she asked the question that way, it was like unpopping the cork. And I must have talked for over an hour as my higher self. And then a guide came in, and a specific writing guide came in to help me and point out all the lifetimes where I absolutely had been doing this. And also pointed out a couple where things hadn't gone well in that area. So there were some blocks and there were some self-limiting beliefs in that area. So that's just a big deal. And many people have wonderful, wonderful abilities, whether it's as a healer, as an herbalist, as an astrologer, as a writer, an artist, whatever it might be, because they've done it many times before.
Right. So I left some notes here because I wanted to say that I agree with you about all this, and that during the sessions that I participate in, there's two reasons past lives come up. One is for, like you said, to resolve some sort of past life trauma, or experience it where the energy is being blocked and it needs to be released. The second is to remember your mastery, from something that you did before.
Great way to put it.
And this happens quite a bit. It's almost as often as the trauma stuff, where all of a sudden I'll see a past life, and I'm watching. I'm like, okay, there's no trauma. What's going on? And then the guides are like, well, the idea here is, this person was very good at this, and so now this information is going to start to seep through like osmosis into dreams, into intuition, into just. Actually, it'll be accessed if the person wants to meditate and think about this life and what they did in that life. Now, I just recently came across, now we didn't talk about this in the episode, but I just thought it was a good thing just to interject here, because I just last week did a past life regression with somebody. It was not a full regression. It was just a past life came through, and we were watching the life, and it was about mastery and so forth. And then a very unusual thing happened. I was shown a dream that this person had hundreds of years ago. And during the dream, they had suffered a psychic attack, and a portal had been left open. So it was like a door. The back door was left open to this guy's energy. So we went in and we closed that. So that was a fascinating addition to.
That's a big deal.
Yes. So it was so subtle. It was so detailed. So we were watching this past life, and we were both kind of baffled by it, because not anything really major was happening. And then all of a sudden, and he was seeing it too. So that's another reason that we knew it was confirmed and legit, was this dream that this guy had. And it was kind of a spooky dream. So it was used to instill fear. And that's a way in for some of these beings. So if you can try not to be fearful, if you're able to do kind of somewhat lucid dreaming, it's good not to try to be afraid, because that's how they get access. And that's what happened to this guy. So we closed the portal, we acknowledged the dream, and we basically shut it down, sent it away. So that was pretty interesting.
That's fascinating. That's so interesting. Absolutely. And breaking cycles that no longer serve us, resolving those self-limiting beliefs, and just releasing those unwanted frequencies is a huge deal. And we can just start to feel so much better, and just do so much better, and enjoy life so much more when we're able to do some of those things. And it's fascinating. A lot of them come up, those self-limiting beliefs can come up in the area of finances and money and wealth. And I just have so many people where I'm able to work with them. And what the guide will say is, oh goodness, here's another one who was taught and doesn't realize, because they were taught this as a child, that money is the root of all evil. Or they're just remembering, unconsciously remembering these lifetimes where they had taken a vow of poverty, where it was appropriate at that time because they were entering a nunnery, or they were entering a monastery, that type of thing. Or there was some sort of, communal support that was going on. But that's not the system that we're in now. So, but just getting rid of, being able to just shine the light on those and say, that was then, and this is now. And as the Sisters of Providence taught me, I was in healthcare for about 30 years and had some really hard negotiations with this, wonderful healthcare system called Sisters of Providence. And one of the nuns just looked me straight in the eye, and she said, "This is not a good enough deal for us. And no money, no mission." And I thought, a nun just told me that. And this was back in the 1980s, and I never forgot it. And it's just so true. So just feeling that we deserve to have resources, and resources are not just money. Resources are our good health, being as healthy as we can be. It's those wonderful relationships and connections and networking. So when I ask people who are kind of struggling financially, and when we look at that during their session, and when we learn their life purpose and say, are you ready to move forward in grace? Can we bring in some more ease and grace of, I deserve to attract the resources and the ease and the flow and the grace to live my life purpose. That's a game changer for a lot of people. And it seems to really change any self-worth issues, or having been socialized, work harder, work harder, work harder, work harder, which is really a type of a poverty consciousness. So those are some of the cycles that.
It's untrapping energy in multiple chakras right there. That's really cool.
Right, exactly. So anything further, Gregg, on those 3 topics, or are we ready to wrap up with some fun gifts that we want to share with people to celebrate
Yes,
our
let's
1
talk
year
about
here?
gifts.
Great. Well, I am happy to offer 2 30-minute healing sessions, and we'll just work on wherever I can be the most of service. The sessions will be via Zoom, and we'll schedule them. So to enter the raffle for that, and I'm also offering an unlimited number of guided meditation to any dolphin, whale, mermaid, merman past life that you may have had. It's a 29-minute guided meditation to go to a past life, specifically as a wonderful sea creature. So please enter the raffle for those by this Wednesday, May 12th at noon Pacific, by going to my website, which is wendyrosewilliams.com. And the final tab on it is the contact tab. And prizes will be awarded on that day. And I'll let you know if you qualified for one of those 2 healing sessions. I'm just going to let Spirit choose, and I'll be doing a random drawing on those. And then other people will be enjoying that guided meditation.
Excellent.
So how about you, Gregg?
I have giveaways too. Yay. So mine is much more rapid. I will give away 3 free books and 3 free admissions to the online group healing circle that I run every Sunday. Obviously, you got to make sure that you can meet the schedule, but all you have to do is I'll give away 3 books and 3 admissions to the session to the first people who private message me, or you can email me as well. So I'll entertain in any way of making the first 3 people who make contact with me for the book, I'll mail it to you. And for the first 3 people who contact me for free admission to the online group healing circles. And
well, wonderful. And
yes.
Gregg's book is fantastic. You're really going to enjoy the gratitude curve. And he's actually got a chapter in it, which is the past life regression session he did with me. And I know people are just loving your online healing circle, Gregg. So wonderful, fantastic gifts.
Excellent. Thank you. All right.
All right. Well, please join us on Sunday, and I cannot read the date because our little Zoom faces are there. Oh, there we go. I had to move it. Sunday, May 23rd at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Join us for the next Waking Up Spiritually podcast. And again, you can go to wakingupspiritually.com and find episodes all there. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I included the link in that if you are seeing this visually. If you're not just listening, the link is there for you. And you can rate and review us on Apple iTunes and other podcast apps. We'd be very grateful for that. That just helps more listeners find us. And Gregg's website is Gregg Kirk, Gregg, Kirk.com. And mine is wendyrosewilliams.com. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and happy Mother's Day to the mothers in the group. And that includes people who just help mother others. And that includes mothers whose children have passed on. So, and also people who are just missing their mom today. So a big hug, and just want to extend that wonderful energy.
I second that. And I want to thank you, Wendy, for being a great co-host for a year.
So. Oh, well, thank you, Gregg. This is so fun. And the way Gregg and I met, we met through a Facebook group, and we both just knew, it's like, I know him. Yep. And I remember we scheduled a phone appointment. So we just like jumped on the phone together and said, I know you somehow. So yep. This has been a lot of fun. And I just so appreciate all the technical work and all the things that you do to make the podcast happen.
Thank you. Well, here's to many more years.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.